Now we shall go back to the case of wife number 3 and find out why Sulwa likened her to Ajoba who destroyed the city of Soba. Before she was given in marriage to her present husband, Nadia Atta was an extremely beautiful girl. She was secretly in love with her neighbor. In Islam, love before marriage is a crime, and so her attraction resulted in many bad consequences to her family. When the society discovers a girl in love, then she is no longer marriage material. No family will consider her for their son. The virginity of the girl in love would be in great doubt. Moreover, love is widely considered to be an incurable disease. Once the heart is infected with that plague, no power in the entire world could deliver her from it. A girl in love is likened to spoiled and rotten fruit. Understandably, her family tried to get rid of her as soon as possible. If they did not kill her, they would have to sell her in marriage to anyone, no matter how old was he, how poor was he, how ugly might be, how low his social status, and what ethnic group he belonged to. Nadia was 15-year-old when she was found to have been infected with love Ebola. Her parents decided to spare her and offer her in marriage, to salvage the family reputation. Only 2 men came forward and asked for her hand. Both men knew that she was diagnosed with that deadly virus, but her extreme beauty and her youthfulness compelled them to compromise their moral and social principles. Each one of them believed that if he get her, he would cure her. Both were old men, one as old as her father and the other one closer to her grandfather's age. Both were already married, one with 2 wives and the other with 3. Her family agreed to give her in marriage to the one who had less wives and who was younger. And that man happened to be the polygamist Haj Osman Baraka. The loser wept hot tears when he heard that his proposal was declined and someone else got the lovely spoiled apple. Nevertheless, his story does not end here, and we are going to meet him again sometime down the road. Nadia's disease proved to be incurable. No matter how much her husband tried to expunge her feelings with beatings and threats, he could not bend her to his will. She was a daring and bold young girl who openly confessed to him that she was in love with her neighbor and that she was not going to forget him. She also admitted that she had indulged in kissing and hugging him. Though Haj Osman owned her physically, but he couldn't have her emotionally. She hated him and told him on his face that she abhorred him. In spite of all this, the Haj loved her and his soul cleaved to her soul. He tolerated all her nonsense and rebellion against his authority. When she got possessed by the demon of the white man, he spent a lot of money on her deliverance by way of the Alzar ritual dance. Nadia spent 4 years with her husband, not a single day passed between them without fighting. Haj Osman beat her, tied her up with ropes, starved her, and tortured her through various cruel means, but he couldn't change her or win her heart. In his anger he divorced her thrice. Every time he divorced her he regretted his decision and took her back. On the 3rd time he couldn't able to take her back because it was illegal in the Sharia for the husband to take back a thrice divorced wife, in succession by the same man. Nevertheless, Haj Osman refused to allow Nadia to return to her parents' house. He kept her inside his house not knowing what to do to get her back. He stopped sleeping with her because he knew legally he could not have sex with her. He consulted the Imam of the mosque and sought his advice. The Imam told him that if he had sexual intercourse with her, he would be committing adultery. He wisely advised him that he should find a man to marry her and then divorce her. If that condition was fulfilled, then he could take her back and sleep with her. Haj Osman accepted the wise counsel of his religious leader and began to search for such an ideal man who would agree to marry a young beautiful thrice divorced wife and then divorce her in order to legalize her for her former husband. The Haj was careful in his search. He heard about past stories of desperate husbands like him who fell in serious traps when in hurry, they picked up anonymous men out of the streets and paid them for the deed. Those men refused to divorce the wives and demanded their right to conjugate the marriage first. Some even demanded more money to release the bond wives. A desperate man, Haj Osman left no stone unturned before he picked the right man for the job. Guess what? he inadvertently chose the loser who shed hot tears when his very own proposal was rejected. The Hajj had no knowledge that that man was his competitor and adversary. The man acted in subtlety and came in wolf clothing and offered his help. He made a lip promise that he would marry Nadia and divorce her the very same day. But, after the marriage contract was signed in the mosque by him, Nadia's father, the Imam and 2 witnesses included, he changed his mind. Then, and only then did he reveal his true intentions. He said that he wanted his wife to be handed over to him as soon as possible, otherwise he would go to the Sharia court and file for obedience sentence. That sentence is usually passed by the judge of the Sharia court against the disobedient wife. Accordingly, the cops would come and drag the disobedient wife by force and take her to the house of her husband. Haj Osman felt that he was badly being duped by the old geezer. At first, the Hajj refused to give in to the threats of the now legal husband. He uttered his threats too. He swore by the divorce of his other 2 wives that he wouldn't allow any mortal being to touch a finger of his former wife Nadia. He announced that he would allow Nadia out of his house over his dead body. Many men in the mosque including the Imam tried to find a solution, with each and every solution and compromise being rejected by the 2 parties in dispute. Each man stood on his ground and no quarter was given. Finally, Haj Osman was compelled to agree to the compromise when his opponent took the matter to the Sharia court, filing out for an obedience sentence. The Hajj knew beyond any doubt that the court would not rule in his favor, and any resistance on his part would result in his humiliation and warrant a beating by the cops in full view of his wives and whomever might be present, added to the insult of having his beloved removed and taken to his adversary in full view of all bystanders. In accordance, Haj Osman agreed to work a compromise. The compromise was to be worked according to the terms of the new husband. First, the Hajj had to redeem his beloved wife Nadia by offering him another wife in her stead. Secondly, the Hajj had to cover the wedding expenses of the said marriage. Thirdly, the new husband will not divorce Nadia unless his sponsored marriage to a new wife was conducted in the mosque by the Imam and 2 grown-up Muslim men as witnesses. Fourth, the new husband would not accept a woman who was already married and deflowered. He expressly wanted a 10-year-old virgin, who just so happens to be a daughter. And that virgin just so happened to be his 10-year-old daughter of his first wife. And so Haj Osman agreed to give his 10-year-old child in marriage to a 63-year-old man, in order to redeem his beloved wife Nadia. Thus his own daughter was doomed by his own hand. The compromise was worked out in the mosque, adopted and decided upon. The old geezer, his name was Harun, divorced Nadia in front of all. Immediately, after the divorce, his marriage contract with the daughter of Haj Osman was conducted by the Imam. Haj Osman acted as the wali, legal guardian, of the absent bride, with Harun as the bridegroom. The bridegroom paid the customary dowry, the bride's price, in cash to the wali of the bride. When the signatures of the bridegroom, the wali, the Imam, and the 2 witnesses Muslim men were recorded in the marriage contract, the Imam officially declared Harun Rahama and Rakia Osman lawfully wedded. Everyone was happy and everyone congratulated everyone. At once, a celebration date was scheduled in which the bridegroom would come to the bride's house and consummate his marriage with her. When the news reached the ears of the Sharia court's judge, a huge legal issue was raised. The judge of the Sharia court, known as Maulana Ibrahim al-Hassan, threw in his red flag and declared the whole matter was unlawful. The Maulana supported his objection by first quoting the Quranic verse that says, "And if the husband divorces his wife, for the 3rd time, she shall not remain his lawful wife after this absolute divorce, unless she marries another husband and the second husband divorces her. In that case, there is no harm if they, the first couple, remarry." Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 230. Until this verse, there was no illegal action taken by the disputed parties. The judge's objection was based on an authentic hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, and a true practical similar case happened at the lifetime of the Prophet. Maulana said that even if Harun Rama agreed to divorce Nadia Atta, still she could not go back to her husband, Haj Osman. He quoted a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, which states that a second husband should taste the honey or sweetness of his bride and she must taste his honey, which means they must have sexual intercourse. In his book, Asbab al-Nuzul, page 46, the Suyuti states that a woman came to the Prophet Muhammad and told him, Abdul Rahman, the succeeding husband known in Arabic as the Muhallal, whom she wed after she was divorced, has divorced me without having any sexual intercourse with me. May I go back to my ex-husband? Muhammad said to her, no, that is not permissible until Abdul Rahman has sex with you first, then you may go back to Rafat. In our case, the legalizer Harun Rama is Abdul Rahman and Haj Osman is ex-husband Rafat. Accordingly, based on the decision of the Prophet Muhammad that had been stated in this hadith, Harun's divorce of Nadia void pending the formality of tasting each other's sweetness or honey. This case was narrated in more details in another hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. Yahya related to me from Malik from Al-Miswar ibn Rifa al-Quradi from Aziz Ubayr ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Aziz Ubayr that Rifa ibn Simwal divorced his wife, Tamima bint Wahb, in the time of the Messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, 3 times. Then she married Abdul Rahman ibn al-Zubayr and he turned from her and could not consummate the marriage and so he parted from her. Rifa wanted to marry her again and it was mentioned to the Messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, and he forbade him to marry her. He said, she is not halal, or lawful, for you until she has tasted the sweetness of intercourse. Muwatta Maliks, Book 28, Hadith number 28. The proclamation of the Sharia court judge rendered the divorce of Harun illegal and so the old geezer ended up being the great winner by having 2 wives with Haj Osman being the abject loser. Even so, Haj Osman refused to hand over his beloved Nadia to his adversary. Once again, after long discussion and counseling at the mosque the 2 disputed parties agreed to work another compromise. According to this new compromise, Haj Osman had to make another great sacrifice. That sacrifice would effectively jeopardize his honor and fill his mouth with dust and his head with ashes, but he had no choice. The Hajj against his will agreed to the old geezer entering his house and having sexual intercourse with his beloved wife Nadia, but that had to be one-time deal. So a date was scheduled inside the mosque for the night on which Harun Rama could come and legalize the vagina of the wife in question. Everyone in the entire town came to know that on such and such a day the old man, Harun Rama was coming to Haj Osman's house to fuck his wife number 3, Nadia. Samira never doubted any story that her friend Salwa had told her except the story of the 3rd wife. In complete astonishment after hearing the details of the story, she said emphatically that such a thing should never happen in real life to anyone. She refused to believe that any man in the entire world would agree to another man coming to his home to have sex with his own wife in order to legalize her for him. For Samira, such absurdity did not warrant any name. It was more than adultery, fornication, sodomizing, lesbianism, masturbation, polygamy, polyandry, rape, bestiality, pedophilia, etc. Human beings had not yet reached that low level of sexual degradation to come up with such a term to describe that action of the muhallal. Sexual legalizing simply does not do justice to that level of sheer evil. Naturally, Samira wanted to know if at all, the old man had crept inside the house of the notorious polygamist on the night in question and raped his ex number 3 wife and not being slain in honor killing. Salwa answered in the affirmative and the reply hit Samira like a thunderbolt and bamboozled her. She simply responded with a terse, I don't want to hear any more stories about those savages. For Samira, it signaled the end of her desire to learn more of the abuse of women in Islam. She concluded that there could be no greater evil to uncover than what she had learnt that day. Samir did not agree with Samira's decision, agreeing wholeheartedly that there would probably be no greater abuse they add to what they had already learned. He also agreed with her that it was time for them to quit their research and pack up their belongings, leave that dark place and return to the light of reason and morality in their country. But, in the interests of closure and empathy, he begged his wife to wait until determined the fate of the poor child, Ruqayya. Was she going to be handed over to that wicked old geezer to be abused and raped by him too? Disgruntled and not totally convinced, Samira swallowed up her wrath and returned to her friend Salwa and asked her to continue her narration of the unfortunate women. Salwa resumed by describing the events around wife number 3 the night the old man came to taste her sweetness. Nadia herself had confided her bitter experience with Salwa. Nadia never felt so much humiliated and degraded in all her life than when that dirty old man had raped her. His body smelled like a decomposed body of a dead animal. His mouth produced a nasty odor of snuff. It seemed that he had never once brushed his yellow-stained teeth. He fell on her body as an animal fell on the body of a resisting female. As soon as he attacked her body, she began to resist and push him away. He was such a strong old man that she could not kick him off. Nadia regretted that she agreed to be locked in a room with such a beast. She did everything she could to stop him from raping her. She scratched his face with her fingers' nails. She hit his body. She bit his cheeks and shoulders. She screamed as loud as she could, but no one came to rescue her. Before he emptied his filthiness inside her, Nadia lost her consciousness. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself in a hospital. After that horrifying night experience, Nadia fell very sick until everybody thought that she was going to die at any moment. It took long time for her body to overcome that brutal rape. As soon as she came out of the hospital, Nadia was confronted with another problem. Wife number 1 accused her of being the cause behind the marriage of her daughter to her ex-husband. It was no surprise that the two wives engaged in constant verbal and physical fights, day in and day out, night and day. According to Salwa and Sakina, wife number 1 took the fight to more nastier level. She decided to kill Nadia, albeit in a very drawn-out painful way. She schemed to kill her without directly involving herself in her murder. Naturally, she approached a wicked faqih, a witch doctor or a sorcerer, and paid him to work the worst black magic on her rival Nadia. Wife number 2, Hafsa, joined her in her plot and even made her contribution to the payment. And that's how Nadia got possessed and almost died in the process. According to Salwa, Nadia was lucky enough to have escaped the grip of the black magic before it would invariably kill her. Her husband loved her so much, which explains the amount of money he had spent on the Alzar dance.